Episode 5 of Helluva Boss just aired, and there is so much to talk about, from hints of RoboFizz to the Wrath Ring, to what's going on with angelic weapons on the black market, and more. Welcome back to Cartoon Universe! Daddy Deepcut here with another Everything You Missed, this time for episode 5 of Helluva Boss. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we got a whole bunch of has-been and Helluva Boss theory videos coming this week. The first interesting thing to pop up is a billboard above Moxie and Millie's apartment advertising RoboFizz. We know RoboFizz are produced at a factory in the Lust Ring and are available for purchase, but this seems to indicate that they are affordable enough that they are being bought en masse, as opposed to a luxury for the elites. After this, it's a pretty straight shot to the Wrath Ring, which is what we learn the most about in this episode. Like the other rings we have seen, it seems to have its own uniquely colored sky, but unlike the others we have seen, it seems to have a lot more going on in the atmosphere with clouds and haze, despite the landscape being a dry, deserty wasteland. Both this landscape and the culture of the people, who seem to largely be imps, is a combination of Southern and Western American tropes, mashing up a Wild West tone into a more Southern-feeling community. While here we also see some of the native species of the Wrath Ring, including demonic pigs, demonic horses, and demonic sharks that seem to live in tiny bodies of water. We have yet to see much of the wildlife in other rings, with the most prominent example being demonic birds seen at a cafe in Pentagram City in one of the prequel comics for Has-Been Hotel. Up until now, Blitz has always seemed like a bit of a mess of a person, and without any comparison, I personally had the belief that Blitz isn't particularly skilled at his job, but this episode really seems to indicate otherwise. While Blitz is a disaster of a person, he manages to make it to the end of the pain games with Stryker, and his business is doing so well that they're essentially backed up on assassinations at the moment. Stolas' place in this episode is also one that is very interesting. For the most part, the authority system within Helluva Boss's Hell is one built around the Seven Princes, but while Satan is mentioned in an expression of disbelief by Moxie, he makes no appearance at this supposedly important festival, a festival that Stolas not only shows up for, but is entirely necessary for. We don't have any reason to believe that the royalty of the Goetia were at war in any way with the Seven Deadly Princes, but with the rings each being tied to a prince and Vivziepop saying that the Goetia are a separate form of nobility within Hell, it seems weird that the citizens of Wrath would have this particular ceremony with Stolas of the Goetia. The ceremony itself is also rather interesting. Stolas claims that he is giving them the real Harvest Moon, which may mean the Harvest Moon as it appears on Earth, considering the portal he makes in the sky. Despite the whole episode focusing on this ceremony, we currently don't know what its actual purpose is. He is supposedly blessing the imps' harvest, and supposedly they are having this festival in order to celebrate the hard work that the imps do providing food for all of Hell. But whether or not this is purely ceremonial or if it actually affects the harvest has not been explained. We've got more things you missed to explain, but real quick, if you like this content, consider looking at our Patreon. For $1 a month, you get a weekly theory or discussion video like this one, and for $5 a month, you get up to 3 a week, plus early access to our videos here on the channel. There's a lot of different tiers that you can check out, so I'll leave a link in the pinned comment down below, and even if you can't afford it, we have a free theory up you can listen to about why Heaven really does their annual exterminations, so make sure you at least check out that one. Then of course there is this interestingly beautiful weapon, one that can kill other demons, even royal ones. For those who don't know, Helluva Boss is a spin-off of Has-Been Hotel, a show that is premised on an annual extermination of citizens of the Pride Ring, and perhaps other rings as well. During this extermination, angels known as exorcists come down with weapons to kill as many demons as they can. It is currently unknown if their goal is earthborn sinners or all demons. They leave behind weapons, which we later see other demons collecting and making inventory for. According to Vivziepop, these weapons are sold on the black market, but we didn't know just how rare or expensive they were until now. She also mentioned before that some of these weapons would be melted down and turned into other weapons, including bullets and guns, which set up this episode perfectly. One thing I do not know for certain is whether or not lower level native demons like imps can be killed without them. There are an extreme number of cases where the imps talk about other demons dying pretty casually, with this episode being no different. We know Earthborn sinners are immortal, but they cannot reproduce the way that imps can, and I have heard talk on some live streams about characters like Charlie being long-living but not immortal, though we should take these particular live streams with a grain of salt, and as always, things could have changed between that time and this episode's production. Regardless, in this episode, they even refer to the gun as being able to kill royal demons specifically. This could be because they just wanted to emphasize its use in the plot for Stryker to try and kill Stolas with it, or it could have been a pointed phrase to indicate that imps could be killed by other weapons. It is apparently such a rare example of the angelic weapons black market that Moxie has trouble believing any imp could possibly afford it. During his fight with Stryker and Blitz, it is indicated that these weapons are generally only owned by elites and royals, something cemented even further when we find out that it was actually Stolas' wife who hired Stryker to assassinate him, something she has no problem announcing at the table. This sets up yet another character to recur within the show that I'm really excited to see more of. I mentioned earlier that the Wrath Ring and its farming type communities are apparently responsible for feeding the entirety of Hell. Despite this, the people of the Wrath Ring are always talking about war, how much they love war, and how good they are at being in war, with Moxie even talking about how Angel's weapons have changed their combat before simply talking about more war. As far as we know, there is no current war with Heaven going on, and when Millie's father follows up on Moxie's comment about guns, it's about fighting hellish beasts. Whether or not they are at war or simply dreaming of a war that may never come, it is a very interesting contradiction to their simple and cozy farming lifestyle, though the animals that they have to raise are definitely ones you would have to fight to some degree, as we saw Moxie fail to do so when slaughtering the pig. Finally, it seems like we may have our first speaking role for a trans demon, or at least a trans imp. In this episode, we are introduced to Millie's sister, whose horn-colored pattern is male, with thick stripes, as opposed to the female demons we have seen so far, which tend to be black with thin white stripes. Her character is also played by Morgana Ignis, who herself is a trans woman. The horns were likely a way to indicate this to the audience without having to say it explicitly, though it raises questions of whether or not some trans imps may paint over their horns or use makeup to make them resemble the pattern of cis imps. I'm curious how their culture treats this difference between male imps and female imps, and perhaps future episodes will feature this character again, or other characters like her, and explore how trans demons fit in with the various cultures of the 7 Rings of Hell. Now that isn't everything you might have missed in this episode, but it's everything we could fit in this video, so help me out and tell me what other cool small or hidden details that are in the episode that didn't get discussed here. And if you made it this far, we're doing a live stream interview tomorrow, May 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with the cast and creators of Blood of Zeus, so consider coming back for that. See you then!